Foursquare Inedible. I don't think it's that bad. Welcome back, Dram fans. Today we're looking at another Bajan rum, a rum from Barbados, and today it's Foursquare Exceptional Cask Selection Mark XVIII. It's Foursquare Indelible, and Foursquare Indelible being one of the ECS range, it's kind of Foursquare's premium mark. And with Foursquare being very, very popular these days, it's kind of, along with Hamden probably becoming the Springbank of rum. It's not quite that bad, but it's getting there in terms of being unavailable, and every time it goes on sale, people scramble to snap it all up so that they can flip it to make a profit. And true to form, this stuff wasn't available for me to buy. This was actually a very rare auction purchase for me. And if you know me, you'll know that I never pay over RRP at auction. I just flat out refuse to turn a profit for anyone just because they've been a dick and bought something that other people want with no intention of drinking it. Like the vast majority of you guys, I think that whiskey and rum and quality spirits are something to be savoured and enjoyed, and to be drunk, and to be that sensory experience that the people making them want them to be. I have no time for people that are depriving us enthusiasts of these things in order to make a profit out of us. So yeah, I did buy this one at auction, but I actually bought it for about £10 under recommended retail price, which is pretty much the only way that I ever use auctions. And it brings a little bit of a smile to my face that a flipper made a loss on this. But anyway, back to the rum. Foursquare Indelible is bottled at 48%, the same as the Dawley's 14 that we looked at last week. We know that it's a pot and column still blend, just like the RL Seals 10 and the Dawley's 14. So it's all made by Foursquare. There's nothing brought in from elsewhere, but it's a blend of their rums coming from the pot stills as well as their column stills. It's matured in ex-bourbon casks and Zinfandel wine casks. We also know that because this is a limited release, this stuff was bottled at 11 years old in 2021. So you're not going to get this stuff from, well, you might find it somewhere like the Whisky Exchange, because there's certain online retailers that do sell things that they've purchased from private collections. But your best bet, if you do want to find something like this, is to have a look at auctions. And you're welcome to do whatever you want with your money, but I would really recommend not getting carried away. If you wait and you're selective and you're willing to take whatever comes up, you can get, as I have done, a bottle of Foursquare at or below retail price, at least at the moment on the auction websites. It does happen. So why did I buy this one? Why did I go out specifically to find a true Foursquare? I initially wanted to try a cask strength bourbon matured Foursquare, but honestly at the moment this one was far more affordable and available. There was actually a few bottles of this on the auction that I went on when I got this one, and the bids just didn't go as high on this one, which does probably suggest that this is one of the less desirable Foursquares out there. But as we all know, the prices at auction are all smoke and mirrors. It's all a long con, a confidence trick, and this stuff still does get very good reviews. So let's get some in the glass and see if it gets a good review from me. Synthetic stopper. Which fits exactly the same as it did when I bought it, and whether you continuously wet the cork or not, it will fit exactly the same for a long time to come. Curiously and amusingly, there is a batch code on the bottle of my bottle. My bottle of Foursquare Indelible, indelible meaning cannot be removed, permanent, but the batch code on the back is half rubbed off, which I like. It amuses me. Foursquare Indelible on the nose. As with pretty much any Foursquare, big burst of sweet caramel on the nose. Vanilla pods with a light woody spiciness. I would say that the profile of this one getting ahead of myself a little bit, but I think that it really does fit in between the RL Seals, which is it's quite bourbon cask led, and the Dawley's 14, which is quite fruity and I believe Madeira cask led. This one sits kind of in the middle of the two. It's not really as extreme as either one of those. Vanilla pods and a light kind of woody vanilla note, a slight woody spiciness. Surprisingly slightly spirity, I think. There's a little bit of, you can tell that it's not as old as the Dawley 14, I think, or possibly that the casks aren't quite as active, but pleasantly spirity. I think I'm getting a rich kind of distilled sugary spirit on this one, kind of like a distilled refined sugar note, slightly acetic, a little bit of wood spice, and a little bit of a dry softwood note, like a sanded pine note, a little bit of tobacco, a little bit of coconut on the nose. Curiously, what I'm not getting a huge amount of is the wine cask. We know that this stuff is matured in ex-Zinfandel wine casks, and it is there, and I think that it's more there on the nose and the palate. Getting a little bit of kind of jammy, plummy red fruit and strawberry note on the nose of this one, but I kind of think that you have to look for it a bit. It's definitely not overbearing, and it absolutely doesn't take centre stage on this one. It's quite well integrated, and it is a small part of the profile rather than the main event. Perhaps a little strawberry and sherbet coming through from that wine cask, perhaps. Just a playful, winey sweetness. Let's see how it tastes. I must say that it does pack a pleasant punch for just 48% ABV. I think that it does very well for 48, and it could easily pass for 50 or 52. Really great mouthfeel on this one. Just as with the Dawley's 14, this stuff does make me think that 48% is probably the magic number, the sweet spot for rum from Barbados. Flavours on the palate, I'm getting sweet vanilla, caramel, a little bit of a sweet treacle note, burnt sugar, some nutmeg spiciness. Sweet, fruity, a little bit casky, very, very little wine influence on the palate of this one. A little bit on the nose. But if I was tasting this blind, I don't think that I would pick out any wine notes on the palate of this at all. I think that I might possibly kind of pick it out as like a slight sherry influence. But especially on the palate, I would not guess that this is seen a wine cask. So anyone that is possibly considering this that's put off by those Zinfandel casks probably wouldn't worry too much. I do think that on the palate it is a little bit simple though, especially after tasting the Dawley's 14, which just has that real juicy burst of sweet fruity flavour. This one doesn't quite have that. As I said, it is a little bit more towards the RL10, which is a little bit more down to earth and a little bit more grounded in the cask. So I do miss that burst of juicy fruitness from the Dawley's 14 when I'm tasting this. This one, in comparison, is a little bit simpler, but it is very robust. It has some fantastic flavours, as you would expect from anything from the Foursquare distillery. Very warming, sweet, sugar and spice, treacle, sugary, a little bit of a creme brulee note on the palate. It is very Foursquare, not very Zinfandel. I think that there is a little bit of perhaps a slight chalky wine note in the palate and a very slight red fruit sweetness on top of the sweet Foursquare profile. Perhaps a little bit of a raspberry syrup note, but really very minor. As for the finish, one more sip. Brown sugar, caramel, perhaps a little bit of wininess coming through, like a slightly sour rosé wine note on the finish, and a little bit of oakiness. So the question that a lot of you, including myself, are going to be asking with this one is, does it live up to the Foursquare hype? Because Foursquare, as well as Hamden, are hyped distilleries these days. They're hyped, they're sought after, they are acquiring legendary status, and they can be very hard or very expensive to find. So, does it live up to that? Again, I must stress that this is probably not one of the most sought after Foursquare expressions, but as you might have gathered, in my humble opinion, I don't think that this is hugely better than the higher tier Dawley offerings. In particular, I think that the Dawley's 14 is at least as good as this, which if you think about it, it does kind of make sense, because this stuff, when it first went on sale, I think it sold for about £75, and it's 48%, it's 11 years old, and it's finished in a wine cask, whereas the Dawley's 14 is 3 years older, and it's the same strength. It's also, I believe, finished in Madeira casks. So they're from the same distillery, and they are a similar product. So it kind of makes sense that they offer a similar level of quality. But it does raise the question, do you really need to buy a genuine Foursquare? In my humble opinion, no you don't. In my opinion, I do think that it's only really the best Foursquare bottlings that are really head and shoulders, cream of the crop above the other Dawley's offerings. Yes, Foursquare is great, but I do think that you can get equally exceptional value and quality from the Dawley's and Seals range that are actually available to buy, and they're cheaper. If you get a Foursquare and you pay retail price for it, then I don't think that you'll be disappointed, but it's also not really your only option. It's not the route that you have to go, especially when you've got fantastic Dawleys like the 14. Going back to the Foursquare though, it is a fantastic rum. I really enjoy this stuff, and I'm glad that I bought it. I don't think that it's quite as good as some of the bourbon and sherry matured Foursquares that I've had, but it's pretty close. But it is, at the end of the day, a fantastic rum. It's obviously a Foursquare, those coconut and caramel, sweet caramel and brown sugar notes. It's Barbados through and through. As you might have guessed though, if it was up to me, out of these two, I would go with the Dawley's 14. I think that, yes, it's only 3 years older, but I think that you can tell. I think that between these two, the base spirit is very, very similar. You can tell that they're from the same distillery. But I think with the Dawley's 14, I really appreciate that extra burst of sweetness and the slight extra body and intensity that you get from the Dawley's. As for a direct comparison between the Dawley's 14 and the Foursquare Indelible, if anyone's interested, I think that the Dawley's 14 has a slightly richer nose. I think that the Foursquare Indelible probably has a little bit of a better arrival, but I think that the Dawley's 14 really claws it back with a more complex late palate and finish. But all in all, it is close. They're both very, very good rums, although I do prefer the Dawley's. Thanks for watching this one, and let me know what you think about Foursquare, obviously, if you've tried it, or are you just completely put off by the fact that it's so hard to get? Because I can really understand that. Obviously, we are passionate about spirits, about whiskey, rum, mezcal, whatever it is that we drink. We are passionate flavour seekers. But when a spirit is so difficult and expensive and unnecessarily expensive and difficult to find, it does put me off. Some people will go above and beyond to try and find these hard to find unicorn bottlings. But me personally, I'd much rather find something that is easily available and affordable. Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching, and cheers.